Since the day I left TikTok, I have not stopped working. And it took one person who was my first client to just get it in motion.
Wow.
And start, and I'll never forget what she told me. I was like, I want to do, I'm thinking of doing this because this is the necessity and I can help you, etc. She's like, what do you want to do? I said, I want to do sync for independent labels, particularly Spanish language. Because one thing that it's a constant conversation. Every time somebody needs Latin music, there's a catalog that says it has Latin, and then you hear a little thinking, and that's it. And now that's not what I was looking for, or the quality's bad. And I'm like, I have all these independent labels that have quality music, Grammy Award-winning artists, a CSAC, BMI, ASCAP Award-winning writers. Like, they compete with the majors, but they don't have somebody vouching for them, right? And I'm like, I can be your sync agent. I can do that. And she told me, okay, so then do it. I'm like, oh yeah, but I have to get my LLC and I have to get my logo and I have to. She goes, no. Start working. You could do that later. Start working. And from there on, that was my first client. And then I kept going.
This is The Media Machine, where media, business, and innovation intersect. Hi, I'm Johanna Salazar, and I'll be your host as we examine the future of content, technology, and entertainment through the lens of 4 key pillars: process, profit, people, and planet. Leslie Arredondo Cordero is the founder of LAC Music, a boutique agency specializing in sync licensing, music supervision, and brand partnerships. Before launching her own company, she led commercial music strategy at TikTok, Paramount, and Viacom, helping brands integrate music in innovative and impactful ways. She's worked on major campaigns, licensed tracks from some of the most iconic artists in the world, and brings deep experience across the US, Latin America, and Brazil. Leslie is also an Imagen Award winner and a former ERG leader at Viacom. Her career is a masterclass in turning creative vision into business strategy, and I can't wait for you to hear her story. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Joanna.
So I've known you for a while, and many years actually, and we met when we were both working in Viacom. So it's like, I've always been in production. You've always been on the music rights and clearances. Like, what made you decide for that?
Sure. Well, so it's basically, I've always been in the music for content space, right? I didn't start off that way. I started off, in college, had several majors, whatever. When I went to Baruch is when I really started to get involved in music. I ended up working at the radio station. And, it's obviously not a paid job, but it was, us students being involved. And at the same time, I was doing an internship at J Records. And that was like J Records' heyday when Alicia Keys was, on her second album. Santana was reviving his career. Jamie Foxx was negotiating his first album. So, the who's who of artists and writers was all like just right there a touch away. And I used that to be able to bring some talent, right? Not so much artists, but like executives and, people that worked in the industry, bring them into the school and have panels, put together talks, sometimes a listening session. So that got me into that, which is more on the marketing side. I always loved soundtracks. I always loved music in content. Even as a child, I really didn't listen too much to the radio at first. It was always like, the music from E.T., the music from Back to the Future. Obviously, I grew up on this composer named John Williams, who did a lot of the soundtracks for that era, right? A lot of those big movies, Indiana Jones, etc. There were like 2 or 3 composers that really did that. So I was fascinated with, motion picture and sound. And that always stayed with me. And when I got a job at Sony, it was actually for copyright, IP, right? Copyright department. That was for the sales of the albums, right? The royalties, basically, royalties team. And these are the royalties that go to writers. But they needed somebody that spoke Spanish fluently and that could read and write it. And I was familiar with contracts in Spanish. So I was raised my hand. I said, yes, me. And I went there. And then in that process, we started working on DVDs. And those DVDs do require rights for the publishing for the writers. to be able to feature the visual of the concert. The first one I worked on was a Shakira concert DVD. Most of it was written by her, but there were some songs that had one or two co-writers, right? I think Estefan might have been a writer on something. And so I had to go and get the rights for that. And I just found it fascinating. And from there, I went to MTV as a freelancer. And then I left and went to a reggaeton label, like one of the first reggaeton labels. But went there and I started working more on the, licensing side of the music. I was able to pitch some of the catalog. We got some placements even back then on like a CSI Miami. Got the music into Zumba, Zumba videos. And then I went back to MTV. And so the sync side, right, which is sync is basically music in motion, in content, right? Synchronization.
So all the backdrop music and TV films.
Yeah, it could be backdrop, which is music bed, right? Mm-hmm. Or it could be a live performance. If it's in visual, if there's music in a visual, it's a sync. I fell into it, but I think I fell into it by design, right? Because that's where I gravitated to, and that's where the interest went. Obviously, when I saw that there was a position to do that, I'm like, oh, we can do this for a living. This is amazing. And then, of course, I always wanted to work at MTV because, at that time, MTV was it. It was music. Music was MTV, even though they already had, some great programming slates. There was a real concerted effort to continue to keep the music image alive. And then working with the marketing teams for the music and marketing, that was, like, for me, that was creme de la creme because I love things move fast. I love it when they move fast. And I love, like, they're always debuting something new. And it was just a great group to work with. They were so innovative. And at times the work on the background was insane, but it was very fulfilling for me.
And that's exactly how it felt. Yeah. Well, you were there, first of all, for a long time.
I was there for a very long time, spent most of my career. What's now Paramount, right? Because we went through all the iteration of names. MTV Networks to Viacom CBS to Paramount, a place where things were constantly changing. So I feel like it was like perfect for our generation to work there because things were just every day it was something new and it was something exciting. And it was a wonderful time. I learned so much. I grew in my career, both on my craft, what I do, right? Music sync, which is music placement for content, and also on the cultural side as a lead for ERG, the Latino ERG at the company.
And then after that, you went to TikTok, yes. And now you're doing your own thing.
Now I'm flying solo.
What made you do that?
It's something I had thought about for a long time, and actually to roll it back, I always had a side hustle, right? And it wasn't always in my craft. Sometimes it was just, working as with catering companies or something. But when I started doing sync on the side, right, I kind of gravitated to doing it for the Latin music industry because that's not what I was doing in my day job. But I still had a close grasp to that grassroots community from my early days working at Latin labels and also kind of just being involved in the Latin music scene in New York while I was in college, et cetera. So it was like I always had something there, right? Extra projects that I would put under a different moniker. It was actually the Luz Music. And that's because my grandmother's name was Luz, so De Luz. Music was very important in our family. My grandfather was a musician. He played 7 different instruments. He actually lived in the U.S. part-time. He would go back and forth. He was a bracero.
A what?
Bracero.
What's a bracero?
Bracero is there was a program for Mexican men in right after the war, right after World War II. And it was a program where they would give visas to Mexican men to come to the U.S. and work the jobs that the soldiers obviously had up and could not do anymore, and women couldn't do either. So a lot of it was like construction jobs, continuing to build transportation. When you look at like a lot of the infrastructure in the U.S., particularly in the Midwest and in the South, that was in large part built by immigrants, by Mexican men, and other ethnicities as well.
So you've had the entrepreneurial spirit in you for a long time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's definitely been in there. I come from a family that's really hardworking, My mom she's always been a hustler. She, she was a chef for a Middle Eastern family. She specializes in Persian cooking, but she implemented the music in me too, because it was so ingrained in her from her father that, she always says like it skipped a generation. Like she's a lover of music, but she didn't have that special inclination to music that I got. That, in her words, I probably inherited it from my grandfather.
That's so crazy. So going from corporate to your own company, it's a massive shift, right? So in one side, you have all the resources, you have all the teams, it's a big thing, and then
Yeah.
you're on your own figuring it out.
Exactly. So because I had done that before on the side, I always had it in the back of my head. I think, pandemic definitely changed a lot of things when you're working in an office, and that's across the board. And so one thing that was great, that was really a part of like the culture at that point, it was Viacom, was camaraderie. And I think it was still there, but because we weren't in a physical space, there was like a level of detachment at some point that everybody had. I think it's just COVID brought that. So at that point, the idea of doing my own thing and going on my own started kind of buzzing again, right? And I did get the chance right before that to work on a play, like right before the pandemic. So it stayed there. And then I started looking and, interviewing, and I started seeing like the music identity. Where is it now? Because that's what really fulfilled me on the MTV side, right?
What's music identity?
MTV had that music identity so down packed for so long. It was the place where people knew that they were going to go find new music. They were going to go find that visual aspect of music and watch the music. And obviously technology kind of disrupted that, right? We got YouTube, we got Vivo and all that. And so that identity of music and visual music video ended up being shared across the landscape, at least in my perspective. People weren't necessarily going to MTV. So a lot of the content I was working on was marketing for the shows, which was wonderful. Also brought me to a new place, right? Advertising, like marketing, whatever. And it kept on shifting. But then I started seeing that music identity in TikTok. And though TikTok was not the first place I applied to, it was most definitely the goal. As I was leaving MTV, I got the Imagen Award. And so it was like, I want to get back into Latin. I just want to get back. All my side projects were Latin. I got the Imagen Award, and it was like all the signs were there. Technology was changing. TikTok really had that music identity grasped in. Like it was the music discovery. All the artists wanted to go to TikTok, and I think somehow I manifested it. I definitely interviewed everywhere for about a year, but when that TikTok job came up, and I knew exactly who to go to say, I can do this. This is me. As soon as I sent the resume, 3 weeks later, I was resigning. So again, still had that in my mind because I had thought I'm going to do something on my own. Went to TikTok, and that entrepreneurial spirit was renewed at TikTok because that was part of their, part of the culture at TikTok is having the entrepreneurial spirit. It's kind of going in and you own your space and you are given the tools and you're given a map of how to find them. And then you're kind of so off on your own. Also, I moved from straight up music licensing, supervision licensing over to still doing some supervision licensing, but mostly music business development. And so in business development, you're looking for new ways to monetize. You're looking for new ways to strategize, new ways to monetize, new ways to enhance the performance of whatever it is that you're working on. If you're working on the makeup team, you're going to try to enhance the performance of makeup content. If you're working on the music team, you're going to try to enhance the performance of music on the platform. And how do you do that? Right? Bringing in your partners, onboarding new music on. And we had a space that was very unique. We had a library that was a commercial music library. But TikTok's music library was huge because then you're looking at like it's a global space, right? And I think what TikTok was able to do is kind of just make all that one. And the pandemic, it was like a perfect recipe. When you're looking at like the content on social and you put the music against it, it's considered a micro sync. because it's not like something that's placed through a supervisor or something. It's a faster process, right? You're just pulling it off the platform because there's a pre-existing deal that gives the rights to a user to do that.
All the music that I see on TikTok and socials is called a microsync.
Within our community, we consider it a microsync.
Got it.
Yeah, it's once it's on the visual, right? It's considered a microsync. Again, you're not going through that whole process of getting a license. It's been done already because there's a bigger deal that happens between the labels and the platforms where they build those rights in. But they build those rights in for user-generated content, not for business content. So the commercial library, right? TikTok commercial library was a subset of the bigger general library that was specifically for business use. And those negotiations were one-on-one with distributors, with independent labels. So I was in charge of bringing those labels on in Latin America or in the US that were Spanish language or Portuguese language based, because we also worked with Brazil. And so going back to the entrepreneurial spirit that was there, I did notice too, whenever we would have like these partner events, a lot of the partners were ex-TikTok employees who were doing the same thing they did at TikTok, but as independent contractors. But being there, having that entrepreneurial spirit and seeing, okay, these are new ways of like my sync experience is now doing something different, something new that I can probably do on my own. So when the time came that I was actually affected by a restructure, it was a no-brainer. It was like, I'm not in this role anymore, but I have all these partners and they still need help. And the conversation of sync was constant. Every time I would bring a partner in and they saw my background, they're like, oh, you worked in sync. I want to know more about sync. I want to, how do I do this with sync? And I just give them like very, best practices tips. But when, my last days at TikTok, I was like, oh, I can do this and I can work this. This can be my career. And I'm still working on what I love because I do love the music sync space. That really is my bread and butter. It's my baby. I adore it, specifically in the marketing space. But I can also continue doing this music business development because it's somehow related. Since the day I left TikTok, I have not stopped working. And it took one person who was my first client to just get it in motion and start, and I'll never forget what she told me. I was like, I want to do, I'm thinking of doing this because this is the necessity and I can help you, etc. She's like, what do you want to do? I said, I want to do sync for independent labels, particularly Spanish language, because one thing that it's a constant conversation. Every time somebody needs Latin music, there's a catalog that says it has Latin, and then you hear a little tinky, and that's it. And I'm like, that's not what I was looking for, or the quality's bad. And I'm like, I have all these independent labels that have quality music, Grammy award-winning artists, a CSAC, BMI, ASCAP award-winning writers. Like, they compete with the majors, but they don't have somebody vouching for them, right? And I'm like, I can be your sync agent. I can do that. And she told me, okay, so then do it. I'm like, oh yeah, but I have to get my LLC and I have to get my logo and I have to. She goes, no. Start working. You could do that later. Start working. And from there on, that was my first client. And then I kept going. And it's so different, right? You have a project. You're like, all right, this is going to be a 3-month project. I have to already start pitching for the next 3 months.
Yeah.
And I am the operations lead and I am the salesperson and I am accounts payable until I can't handle it anymore. And I'm the marketing person. I'm the social media person until you start growing. And you're like, maybe I'll get somebody to do this, right? And that's the great part. That's the part where it's like, oh, this is working. This is working because now I need help. And I could pass on the knowledge that I've been so fortunate to obtain in my career. But now I can also mentor people and train them and give them a place in their career. And so it's a different world. It's such a different world. But I'm enjoying it.
This is like a case study on how to do it. And I love that you went straight to just getting the job, just doing it. And then you figure everything else out. Like, how did you figure out the LLC part, for example?
I just started working on stuff. And then I'm like, I did have a DBA from the old side stuff that I did. So I reenacted that one and was using that for a bit. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to get this. And that was with that first client.
DBA, doing business as. So that's something that people get. It's like a, how do you get it?
Yeah, when you do independent work,
Mhm.
you're doing it for yourself. Basically, you're an independent contractor, but you don't necessarily have a LLC. Like, there's different levels, right? So the simplest is sole proprietorship and non-incorporated. So that is your DBA, where you can get paid as yourself and you just use like a moniker, right? So my W-9 would say Leslie Arredondo Cordero, DBA de Luz Music, right? That's what I had for years. And that's what I started using when I started working again. Because I still wasn't sure about the LAC music. Some people call it LAC music, which I find really cool. I'm like, okay, let's just call it that. But then somebody else was telling me, like, I didn't know. I was like, oh, maybe I'll use my old name. That was the thing. I didn't know what name to use. Maybe I'll get a new one. I was going through different ideas with friends and colleagues. And then someone was just like, just use your initials. Just start with your initials. It's cool. Like LAC Music. I'm like, all right, the easiest thing to do. And then people were just like, oh, that's your agency, LAC Music. I'm like, yeah, sure, LAC Music. But it sounds good. And I'm like,
I lack music. I need music.
okay, LAC Music. So that is, wait, but it is because of the initials. Y'all can call it LAC Music all you want.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So you went and then you got your LLC?
Yeah, then I got the LLC. When I started putting together my business email and stuff, I went through one of the sites. Is it okay if I mention it here? Because I don't know sometimes.
Yeah.
I went on GoDaddy, but you know why I went on GoDaddy? So one of my producers, right, at MTV left, and he left to go work at GoDaddy, which was, websites, right? They create domains and all that. You can buy your domain off GoDaddy. So when I thought, where do I get a website? Automatically, I thought GoDaddy. So I did GoDaddy, and it was great because now those sites have like partnerships with other sites that can help you continue to get additional things that you need to create a small business. So I got my domain, I got my business email, and then I didn't do it right away because I started getting work. One day I was like, oh, now I have to get it because I have to do taxes. I was like, shit. So I went on LegalZoom. So through GoDaddy, they have like an add-on package and you can go on LegalZoom, and on LegalZoom, you can do your LLC, and it is quick. It is super, super quick. And I'll give another tip. I went and I chose the basic package, which means you pay $0, but then you only pay like the state fees for what they call articles of incorporation, right? It's whatever paperwork the state has to put in. If I knew back then what I know now, I would have gotten the upgraded package that's like $250, and you can talk to a lawyer and they'll put all the other things that you have to do after the LLC. Because when you create an LLC, you need to do those articles of incorporation, right? Which LegalZoom can do for you. And there's other sites too. But then you also have to to register with the New York State Tax Department. And then you have to get a business license. And then you have to put an ad out. You have to buy an ad in a publication or on a site or something to announce your company, which that's my next step. I haven't done that yet. I still have a little bit of time. So it is a whole process. It's not as bad as it sounds, but definitely great to use those online resources that make it easier. And it is worth the additional investment to get the upgraded package to just ensure that everything is done in one shot.
Okay, so you started making money right away, and then you incorporated. But what would you say is your business model? Like, how does your business make money?
So I have 3 pillars. And basically my first pillar, which is really not the one making money yet, but it is the potential for money in the future. I have a catalog of music, right? I represent these independent catalogs for music synchronization. And that means that I go out there and I pitch the music to music supervisors, to creatives and ad agencies, to creators that like big creators on social. I pitch the music for their use. And then I retain a percentage of whatever the rights holders that I represent collect. So that's the first part, right? And that's like a sales job. And something that I do a little bit different too is that because I work with independent labels, I also come in and I offer services to organize those labels backend for sync. Sometimes, people go into acquiring music and they really are not that aware of it. especially now when there's a lot of these like investment firms coming in and buying music. So I go in there and do a whole catalog evaluation, and then I help them set up their systems for sync, really consolidate like a database, build a database of the music that's current, that so they can match within their own systems. Okay, like if they have a new song, right, they can just add it to that. And that's to get everything in one place so that then it's uploaded to the system that we use called Disco. So Disco it's an app, right, system, and is the system that's used by music supervisors, by labels that are pitching music, by teams like the Paramount team, right? The Paramount music team uses Disco when they need to use music, when they need to source music from labels, artists. They send them a Disco list. And then from there, you can share music files, you can share the stems, you can share the instrumental vocal separated, etc. And it has everything. It's got like music tags, database, and then metadata. You can identify it by genre, by era, by musicality, by instrument, by mood, by so many different factors, and that's what makes sync different too, is that when labels have music, they're always thinking of like the metadata, the descriptors, right? But they're thinking of metadata that pertains to streaming, to DSP placement, to sales. In sync, a lot of the metadata, additional metadata that there is, doesn't pertain to the same place. It's a lot more descriptive. The era that the music was made, is it feminine? Is it masculine? Is it like low voice? Is it like what kind of a vocal range is the music? Is it driving? Do the lyrics touch a certain theme that might pertain to a scene in a program or to a message for a brand? So it's really deep diving.
So you go in and you help them pretty much tag all this so that they can think
Upload
about all the ways to exploit their music.
Yeah, I help them upload it. I help them organize it inside. So yes, that includes the tagging. That it's also entering any information that's needed there, whether it's like, organizing how like the artist and title and ISRC, and if they have the publishing information, putting the publishing information in there. Sometimes they don't have the artwork with the music files. I have to get the artwork and then attach it, and it's a lot of little intricacies, and that's a big project. This building their Disco page is a huge project. And then after that, I also give them some deliverables, we'll develop presentations that they can use, etc. And it's all about getting them ready for sync. I still will represent them for the year, but now they're ready. So if an opportunity arises, they have all this in place, and we'll even build a few playlists for them that are very indicative to the sync markets, right? So like being able to like give power, like these little labels a little bit more, for me is really rewarding. Getting really deeper into Latin music, like not just like, there's salsa, there's like salsa venezolana, salsa cubana, salsa Puertorriqueña. So for me, it's fascinating. Like how blessed am I to be able to work in this, right? Help them go into the spaces that they want to go with the tools needed, right? And it's, even the sync space is evolving so much that they're never going to be 100% ready, but you're definitely a world ahead of what you were 3 months ago before we signed the contract.
Yeah. It's amazing when you're able to do what you love and what you're passionate about. What was the biggest mindset shift you had to do to go from like employee, corporate person to founder?
I think the biggest mindset was like, you're in corporate and you are working and grinding to get your goals met, but it's not a survival skill because it's something that's a day to day, so it's like, it's a skill set and you continue learning, but with, when you have your own business, it's survival. And so you're not getting the work to do. You have to be innovative and invent the work, right? Because I can say, oh, I can do this. And it's just, oh, I can do that. But how do I sell it? How do I present it? How do I show you that it's worth it for you to do this? That this is an investment that's going to have rewards for you, and how do I maintain the relationship too and make sure that those clients continue to give references? So the mindset is definitely, I think, I wouldn't say it's more aggressive. That's not it. But there's your drive has to be renewed. I'm you're in corporate, your drive is there, but it's not constant. That doesn't happen when you work for yourself. You can't relax. There's no relaxing, and that doesn't mean that you can't have a work-life balance. That's the reason why I did this, to have a work-life balance that works for me, right? Everybody's balance is different, but there's no taking a back seat. And, and especially your mindset, we're constantly thinking of it. So thinking of like, I need to get paid. And then I'm going to figure out what's going to happen for the next 3 months. And is there anything else that I can do in this space that I work in that I can continue to build? Because that's what I want to do too, is build. And that's why I didn't stick exclusively to the sync space. Like everything I'm doing is related to sync, but it's not exclusively what I did at Paramount, right? It's not just music licensing for production, music supervision for production. No, I'm doing other things that are adjacent to that are still related, but aren't necessarily the experience I come from. I have represented a catalog before for a short time, for a couple of years, but I did see there's a lot of sync agents, especially in LA, and they have some really good music, right? But it's mostly on the Anglo side, and I'm like, they might have 1 or 2 labels that are Latin. I'm like, but do they know how to sell it? Maybe they do. But I know that I know how to sell it. I know that I can sit there and talk about Latin music till till someone's ears explode, and I can continue and I can be excited about it, and I can talk about the musicality, the instruments, the roots, how it performs in certain countries, the influence it's had on culture, how it can be used in a scene, because that's what I do for fun. Like, that is my favorite thing to do, is get nerdy about music in content. And like I said, I am so blessed that I get to do this for a living.
And you led strategy, like music strategy, at all those big places. How would you say those, like, what are some lessons that you took from those roles that are shaping how you work today?
Yeah, so I led music strategy for the marketing side. And that was, like I said, something that I kind of just fell into, but loved. I adored it. So when you're working with production, we're providing a service. And for one, it's not about the music that we like, it's about the music that they want. Sometimes that music is not attainable. And so being able to have those conversations, sometimes at a high level, of what the possibilities are, what the pricing will look like, what this process is going to be, and how prepared you need to be for it to go a different way, that was a skill in itself. And that was a skill that really helped me elevate, right? And I have to say, one thing, working at Paramount, it was the best place for not just training ground, but for your career development, because I can honestly say that the majority of people that pass through our team, especially those that made it there for a significant amount of time, have gone on to do amazing things. They have been leaders, literally leading music at Google, at Meta, at new networks that are coming up, at the other major networks. We were held to the highest standards. We were trained rigorously, and we, it wasn't just the amount of work. It was the passion for the work. All of what we did, and we were happy to be there, and we grinded for it. We grinded like no other place.
What's one sync deal that you've done that you felt so proud of?
There's 2 projects that stand out. One is the Viacom project and one is independent. But the Viacom project was a 2013 VMA campaign in Brooklyn. And obviously, as we were working on music strategy, and this is when one of the Beastie Boys members had passed away, I think the year before. And there was a stipulation in his role that his music was not to be used for advertising. And, we had talks with production about, I know that you are going to want to use No Sleep Till Brooklyn, but this is a situation with No Sleep Till Brooklyn. And sure enough, no matter how much we told them, we got the call. We really want to use No Sleep Till Brooklyn. It's like, oh God, what do we do? And I can't take credit for it myself, because I did have somebody, my supervisor at the time, who, is another mentor. Her name is Sherry Rodside. we called our partners, right, at the music companies, and so our first thing was like, let's get on a call with them. Let's strategize this. How do we do this, right? Expecting that we're going to get a no, but still making the effort because it was that important to production.
Mm-hmm.
We got together and just, delivered this heartfelt letter, and we got the approval.
Why didn't they want it used?
Writers, artists are very, it's their art, it's their work, and it's not uncommon for whether it's, posthumously or in life, for artists and writers to have very strict stipulations of how their music is used. Especially the higher profile the artist, the higher profile the writer, right? And people don't usually think of that. They just think it's only the artist. No, there's some very high profile writers who don't also perform as artists, who can make or break a song and who can make or break a deal.
Wow.
For example, a lot of Bad Bunny's music is written by Edgar Barrera. And Edgar Barrera is one of the top music writers in this new Latin music scene that is taken off and got into the top of the general charts. So if he says no on something, it's a no, because that's his copyright, right? So, a 2-second basic copyright lesson with music. There's 2 parts of a song.
Mm-hmm.
It's the composition, and the composition is always the same because that's who created the song, the writers, the producers, etc. Anyone can sing that song, right? Anyone can re-record it. And that's the master recording side. So you can have the same composition, can have 20 different masters because 20 different artists can cover it. It can be a big artist, a little artist, whoever, your best friend, etc. But when you have, especially, sometimes it's not even a high profile artist. It's just an artist that really loves their art. A writer that put their soul into this and they don't want to see it on a McDonald's commercial, or they don't want to see it on a Pepsi commercial. So it's their IP. And so, the Beastie Boys being very much artists, right? When we've worked in music rights, we know that this happens. We know that sometimes the music that comes from an estate is the hardest to license because there might be stipulations in the will. There might be, family members that don't get it. We ran into a situation once. It was a Nina Simone license, and apparently there was some loophole in old licenses. And there's been a few artists on the Motown side that have been able to claim vocal rights aside from the master and publishing rights. So we had to pay an additional 50% for that song.
Oh my gosh.
So that happens, right? It's the copyright world is complex, and sometimes there's one player, sometimes there's multiple players.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to have the relationships with the partners, and having the knowledge of the music.
It's something often that people often misunderstand about licensing or music strategy.
Oh my God, so much. Okay, so the first one is there's this urban myth that if you use the music a certain amount of time, you don't have to license less than a certain amount of time. That's a lie. It's a lie. That never happened. I don't know who invented it. I don't know why people keep saying it. It's a lie. We'll be like, I heard about.
I only use 3 seconds.
Yes. Okay. Oh my God. So you heard it too, right? The 3-second rule. I'm like, there is no 3-second rule. But yeah, I think on the music side, people often misunderstand, the need for copyright too, right? They think that if it's on the internet, you can do whatever you want. That is the biggest lie, and we see that kind of coming into the space now, where a lot of brands who were small brands and have now become bigger are getting sued by the labels for using their music in their content. So, it's very important on the visual side, right? Whether it's content creators, producers, creative directors, to understand that music is not free. Mm-hmm. And if you go on a site and it says it's free, it's probably too good to be true. Somebody owns the rights to that music. And so it has to be respected. But there's so much music too. It's not just the music that comes out of the major labels. There's so much independent music that sounds just as good, sometimes even better than what's, topping the charts on the streaming sites, or that can be replaceable for that. And it's a matter of getting to know where you can find that music. Yes, there's music libraries, and those are great because they have a lot of music, especially for, very short uses, if it's background uses. But then you're looking into like, okay, what else can I use? There's independent music, there's custom music, there's tons of music houses that create custom music for brands, for marketing campaigns, for content. They might create like a, a, a song with a vocal or just an instrumental, or maybe like a little snippet, or maybe even a sonic branding, right? Sonic branding that's still music. So, when you see a TikTok logo and it has a little bloop, right? That's like sonic branding. On the sonic side, for example, you have Law and Order, right? That iconic sound that goes from when you see the logo to when you see the sound,
Something
right?
like that.
Like a cowbell, dum dum, right? And everybody knows that that's Law and Order, SBU.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it.
Or HBO or Netflix.
HBO has what Netflix has. Netflix to Doom. Right now they have the program Netflix to Doom. So those are really something interesting. And working on the marketing side, that was something that I found fascinating.
What advice would you give somebody right now who is looking to start their own creative business?
Learn, get yourself into creative spaces, go get inspired as much as possible, not just with the creative space that you want to be in, but just with creativity in general, because it all ties together at the end of the day, right? So like I'm a sync expert, particularly in marketing. So I need to be in tune to what's going on in marketing trends. I need to be in tune to who's winning the Clios, who's at Cannes, who's winning, all the awards for brands, but also, what kind of new marketing is there? How are creators revolutionizing this? So, getting yourself in that space. But let's say if you're somebody's coming to learn into a specific space, also, there's the internet now. We didn't have that. But like nowadays, it's just a matter of like Google, right? Like best school for this. How do I learn this? Videos on this. Like use YouTube tutorials. Oh my God, they're amazing. So I think right now there's so much information that it's kind of like use your resources, but also try to make sure your resources are credible. Learn about it as far as watching it, but also try to get the experience. Try to talk to the people who have had the experience. Cold calls, reach out, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever. Like, hey, I'm looking for a career in this. I really admire the work that you do. 9 out of 10 times somebody will answer you.
Tell us something that we need to know right now, like about TikTok or trends or something.
Oh, TikTok, use TikTok as much as possible. As far as brands and content for promotion, use TikTok until you can't use it anymore. If it's gone one day, you're going to regret not using it. Even if you use it just for the week before it's gone, use it because the power of that app is tremendous, especially with music. There's so much that comes out of being on the app and being able to jump on trends. And, we're going to get the trends that the algorithm gives us, but there's so many trends happening and there's so many different brands that can take advantage of it. Or again, programming. I have rediscovered shows with TikTok. I started watching Landman because of TikTok, not because I used to work at Paramount. I started watching Chicago Med because of TikTok. It is not a new show. So one, the ability to really get the word out there and a targeted effort, right? Is the scale that TikTok has is amazing. But then also the rediscovery or the discovery aspect of like, here's shows that are 10 years old that people are watching again, that are #1 streaming, that Netflix decided to pick up certain films because they were doing really good. They went viral on TikTok. Clips of it went viral on TikTok. All of a sudden you see it on Netflix. So use TikTok as much as possible. Take advantage of it. So the thing with TikTok is, okay, so here's some tips. If you're going to be a creator and you're going to create content, your content has to be at least 60 seconds long. It has to be original, be authentic, be yourself. It's okay if nothing's perfect. TikTok is this space where things are not supposed to be perfect. You don't have to have the perfect background. Talk to your audience like you would talk to your friends. Not your best friends, because you don't want to be too much, but like you would talk to people that you respect and that you care about. Because that's what the audience wants. And give them information or give them context that you feel they need because they're not getting it somewhere else. And you will see that. And of course, bring your bring your community in, obviously, right? So if you have a footing on LinkedIn, on Instagram, bring them in, watch my TikTok, go see my TikTok, my TikTok, whatever. Because there is a marketing aspect too to getting all those likes, right? A lot of creators haven't just gotten them. They send them to their friends and family, please pass them on, whatever. And then somebody likes it and it clicks and it goes viral. That's another thing with TikTok. It's constantly changing. So like the TikTok that I left 9 months ago, things have changed a lot and they're always moving and they're always 10 steps ahead. But the monetization side, it is real. It is very real. I mean, and that's where the creator industry has come from. And you and I both know this, right? So creators, the ad agencies have shifted from not only going to creative production, but going directly to creators and giving the creators the funds for them to do everything. So it's not that they're like, oh, we have a script for you and we're going to bring our team and they're going to shoot. They're like, okay, we're going to give you $30,000 and then you need to go buy a Christmas tree, give us this many videos, whatever, edit them, put whatever you want, etc.
Leslie, that's how I was doing it like a million in 2012 with YouTube.
We were already ahead of
paying influencers. Well, we didn't call them influencers at the time, but I was literally paying anywhere from $350 to $1,500. $1,500 was the highest we paid. Today it starts at $150,000.
Well, like imagine how far it's come, right?
Crazy.
And then, it's just everything has shifted where the creator really has the power. And you know what? The TikTok format is all, at least on the music side, the TikTok format is being replicated on the other apps. So like I go on Instagram now and they have the same like little box. You want to check like the videos that a song used. It's a little box with the song and then all the other videos that used it, right? And YouTube Shorts, it's something similar too. So I would say, use all of social media if you can, but definitely the big three, right? So TikTok, because it's also about the vertical, the vertical video. TikTok, Meta, right? Reels, and YouTube Shorts, right? For marketing, definitely those are one. And for content, for short form content. What I was going to say is we've seen how it shifted in marketing, but now we're seeing how it's shifting in programming, right? Darman, I said 9 months ago, creators are going to be the new studios. And I was like, you think so? People were like, you think so? No. I'm like, no. It's going to happen. The creators are going to become the new studios. And I'm like, there is this programming. I said, there's these shows that they're kind of amateurish, but they're very engaging. And I just started watching them obsessively, which is Darman. And the minute they announced they were a studio and hired an ex-MTV president,
I just had Sean on here.
Well, you did. I was like, yes, Johanna, ahead of it. I knew it. But that's the thing. That's the new. And right now, they might not be using music in the same way that the traditional studios do, but they will. They will if they get more funding and they, upgrade a little bit. They will. So for me, I'm not looking at just right now. I'm looking long term.
Yep.
I'm looking like, where's this going to be a year from now? And I want to be in that space. And that's something that I even learned from like you. You were always ahead. You were always like on the tech side talking about things that some of us didn't even know you were talking about half the time. But then eventually it was like, oh, I remember Johanna said this one time. Oh my God, this is exactly what she was talking about. But I have to pay attention to those creative trends, not just the trends online, but the trends of business that working at TikTok, you got to constantly change. And even with, I'll give an example. My brother-in-law is an influencer. He's got maybe combined like 2 million followers across all the platforms. And now he's doing comedy tours and stuff. He's Italian-American. He calls himself Little Mo Mozzarella. He's hilarious, a very like exaggerated Italian-American personality that he does. Anyway, he's been doing great. He's been doing wonderful. My sister is married to him, obviously, and we're half Mexican. And we started encouraging him. I'm like, you need to do some Mexican jokes. Like, talk about your life. Talk about your Mexican jokes. And then I said to him, why don't you talk about my husband? My husband's Puerto Rican from the island. He has an accent still, like, we always tease each other, whatever. And I'm like, talk about him, And he did it because he started seeing that people that were like, other people started coming to see him. And I'm like, talk about that. And guess what? Now he has this huge Mexican-American audience across the entire country. And I'm like, so very much New York Italian-American, but because he put his authenticity, talked about his life, and he talks about funny things like he was like, my father-in-law said he was going to take me to the hospital. I get in the car, I wake up, we're in Costco, and he's got a big ass barrel of Viva Peru. Right? And
we all get that one.
Every Latino is going to know what you're talking about. Every man, regardless of race, is going to know about the grandfather in Costco. And every Latino, the minute you say Viva Peru, every nationality is like, we know what you're talking about. Right?
Yeah. Oh my God.
It's like you're going to have a core audience, and they're going to be the people that are like you. But when you get somebody else's attention on social and you see it, you go in deep for that market. And that's what's called, I don't know if it's called that, but I call that an adjacent market. That's how I want to use music too. Like, let's stop using Latin music, right? Spanish language genres to only attract Latinos. Because you know what? I see creators that have millions of followers and they love the music. Remember, like, why are we only marketing? Why is it that brands think that our music is only for us and everybody else loves it? And that's why it's topping the charts, because that people said, this is cool. And not everybody needs to like it. We knew it was cool, but somebody else thought it was cool too and helped us.
Where can our audiences find you?
You can find me, obviously on LinkedIn, right? I do have a LinkedIn page, right? LAC Music. I have an Instagram page also, LAC Music. My website is being built, but it is lac-music.com. So stay tuned for that. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and you'll see the contact info for my business on my business page as well.
Thank you so much. I have really enjoyed this conversation. I know we're going to have you back.
Thank you, Johanna. I'm always happy to talk to you, especially here on this platform. I am so happy that you're doing this. I think that this is you're going to be surprised at how much you're going to get as far as viewers and fans, and it's knowledge that people need.
But thank you so much. I agree. Hopefully we are helping people, and people are learning and discovering and meeting and then networking from. Yeah, so thank you. Thanks for listening to our show. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow us at The Media Machine Podcast on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. The Media Machine is hosted by Johanna Salazar. Our producers are Mia Vinciguerra and Johanna Salazar. This episode was edited by Andrés Cote. This episode features music from Envato Elements. Thanks for listening.